Welcome back to DIY Crafts and Hacks. Today we are going to talk about some easy ways to turn a fabric tube. I know that there are many projects that may require a tube. It could be a handle on a tote bag. It could be we're making a fabric mask and we don't have elastic, so we need to make a little tie. There's a lot of reasons we may need to make a fabric tube. I'm making a fabric tube that's going to be a cover for an electrical cord because I don't like that laying across the floor. So I've got some color coordinated fabric and I'm going to make a tube that I can slip over it. So this tube, it is sewn right sides fabric together. This one was actually done on a serger. It doesn't need to be, it can be done on a sewing machine. The key is you want a narrow seam. This tube is open on both ends, which I will need. In some cases, you will want an end closed, and we'll be going through ways to turn tubes both ways. Before we jump in, I'd like you to click that red subscribe button and turn on that bell icon so that you don't miss any of our future videos. The first method is I am going to use a safety pin. I am going to turn in a little bit of this fabric. And I have a safety pin, which I am just going to pin to the fabric in the end here, and then I'm going to insert it. This is probably the method that most people might know how to do already. This method works well. It is slower, particularly till you get it started, and it will work best with larger tubes, not ones that are really narrow. One thing that I do want to say is I almost recommend for these tubes to do it on a sewing machine, because depending upon what seam is used on the serger, it can add some bulk, which will make it a little bit harder to turn this tube. So I've got it started. I'm just going to keep pushing along, and the tube is starting to turn in on itself. So we will do this until the end. So now I'm going to continue to pull this so it turns on itself. And there we go. We have the tube turned on its right side. So that's method one, and that one is done. Method two, I have another tube. This time I am going to sew the end closed, and I am going to use either a wooden spoon handle, or I could use a wooden dowel that fits inside the tube. Or I could even use a chopstick. Again, the dowel will need to fit inside it. You'll want to have some space that this can go around it and for this fabric to be pushed through. To start in this method, I'm going to take the end that's sewn closed. If there's a lot of excess here in the seam, you can trim it off, just being careful not to cut the seam. Then I'm going to pinch the fabric and I'm going to pull it apart. What I want to do is start pushing the fabric in, the closed end. That will make it easier. I'm going to insert my wooden spoon, hold it against me, and then just keep pushing. And as you can see, this is going faster than the safety pin. So I will just keep going. Pulling it down the handle. And you can see I'm almost actually to the end. All right, now actually I can pull the spoon out and just pull this And now the right side is out. Now I want this open, so now all I have to do is cut off this closed end. So I added about 1 inch to this. I'm gonna cut my end off, and I have my tube turned right sides out. This works well for smaller tubes, starting with about a 2.5 inch strip. I'm actually gonna use a string or a ribbon to turn this time. Insert the ribbon inside the tube, and I will go over to the sewing machine. I will sew across here, anchoring the ribbon into the bottom closed seam, and then I will sew my side seam. I will take care when I sew my side seam that I do not catch the ribbon. So in the end, I'll be able to pull the ribbon, and that will turn this tube inside itself. So here you can see I've sewn the tube, I've anchored the ribbon in the seam, and I've gone back and forth a couple times to make sure I really caught it. As I've sewn the seam, I've kept the ribbon in the fold of the fabric so that it would not catch in the seam. And you can see that my ribbon is quite a bit longer than my tube. So now again, this is easy. I'm just going to pull the ribbon. I'm going to make sure this tube starts turning in on itself, and I'll pull the ribbon some more and it will turn. Again, the hardest part is getting it started. Once I get it started, it's going to turn quite easily. I'm just pulling the ribbon with one hand, and then I'm helping the fabric turn over on itself. And you can see it's turning on itself. And there we go. So now all I have to do is I can cut this ribbon out of the seam. Again, if I need an open tube, I can just cut this all off. And I am done. And I have the ribbon I can reuse another time if I need to make more tubes. Here is another method to turn tubes. So again, this is a narrow tube. It started off as 2.5 inches wide fabric. I folded it in half right sides together, and I sewed a seam. This is sewn closed at the tip. I've tucked in the tip just to get it started. And I am going to make my own fast turn tool with a smoothie straw. This is a big smoothie straw, and a chopstick. So really the requirement is that you need to have a tube that is big and has some give around your tube, because I am going to insert this in. So I've now scrunched all the fabric up to the end. I'm now going to poke in the fabric into the tube. And it will start turning on the stick. So I can just pull it down on the seam. Take off my tube, and here we go. I have a turned tube. So that's kind of a make my own fast turn kit. Narrow tubes are often the most challenging to turn. This is a 1.5 inch strip. As I mentioned, I was making these for masks. In order to turn this, you'll use one of the methods that we have reviewed earlier, either sewing the ribbon or string into the tube and securing it on the end. In this case, I found with the 1.5 inch, the chopstick works pretty well to turn. The other method that I've used that works well is I sew the tube. Once the tube is sewn, I then insert the ribbon using this tool that you use to insert elastic into a waistband. So I just add the ribbon at the end and then secure it and turn it as we've already seen. I hope these tips that we've showed today will help you turn your tubes faster.